The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, and I knew it was trouble the moment I saw the HOA seal stamped across the envelope like some kind of official death sentence. I stood in my driveway in Eagle River, Alaska, holding the thing between two fingers like it might contaminate me. My name is Yates Sullivan, and I had been living in the Cascade Mountain Estates development for exactly 3 years without any problems whatsoever. I kept my lawn perfect during the summer months, my house painted in approved colors, and I never once blasted music after 10 at night. But apparently, none of that mattered anymore. I tore open the envelope and pulled out the crisp white paper inside. The letterhead read, Cascade Mountain Estates Homeowners Association, in pretentious gold lettering, and below that, a wall of text that made my blood pressure spike with every sentence. Dear Mr. Sullivan, it has come to our attention that you have been operating unauthorized commercial equipment on your residential property. Your snow clearing machine exceeds the size limitations outlined in Section 14.7 of the HOA bylaws, which clearly states that snow removal equipment stored on visible premises must not exceed residential standards. Furthermore, your use of said equipment to clear neighboring properties for compensation constitutes a home business, which violates Section 22.3 of our covenants. You have 7 days to remove this equipment from the property or face daily fines of $500. Sincerely, Patricia Vanderbilt, HOA President. I read it twice, then a third time, because surely this had to be some kind of joke. My snow machine was a beauty. A commercial-grade snow blower I had purchased last November after getting fed up with my old residential model that kept breaking down every other week. Living in Eagle River meant serious snow, the kind that piled up 3 feet overnight and laughed at your pathetic attempts to clear it with anything less than serious equipment. The machine sat in my driveway right now, a gleaming red beast that could clear a standard driveway in under 20 minutes. I had helped maybe 5 neighbors with their driveways over the winter, and yeah, a couple of them had insisted on paying me for my time. $50 here, $75 there. I never advertised, never put up a sign, never marketed myself as anything other than a neighbor being neighborly. I pulled out my phone and called my friend Derek, who lived 2 streets over in the same development. You are not going to believe what I just got in the mail, I said when he picked up. Let me guess. HOA. How did you know? Because Patricia has been on a rampage lately. She sent the Johnsons a violation notice because their holiday wreath stayed up until January 3rd. She tried to fine the Martins because their teenage son parks his car on the street instead of in the garage. The woman has completely lost it. I stared at the letter again, feeling anger build in my chest. She wants me to get rid of my snow blower. Says it is too commercial and that I am running a business. Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. That is insane. You helped me clear my driveway after that storm last month. You saved my back, probably literally. Apparently, that makes me a criminal. What are you going to do? That was the question, was not it? I could comply, sell my perfectly good snow machine, go back to breaking my back with an inadequate residential model, or I could fight back. The gears in my head started turning, and a smile spread across my face. I am going to make Patricia regret she ever sent this letter, I said. After hanging up with Derek, I spent the next few hours researching Alaska HOA laws and the specific bylaws of Cascade Mountain Estates. The development had been built 15 years ago on what used to be empty land just outside Eagle River proper, close enough to Anchorage for an easy commute, but far enough to feel like actual Alaska. 350 homes, all cookie-cutter perfect, all bound by the same oppressive set of rules that Patricia Vanderbilt wielded like a weapon. I found Section 14.7 easily enough. It specified that recreational and maintenance equipment stored in visible areas must be residential in nature and appropriate for single-family home use. Vague enough to be interpreted however Patricia wanted. Section 22.3 was equally ambiguous about home businesses, prohibiting commercial enterprises operated from residential properties that generate regular income or customer traffic. But here was the thing. I found Section 8.12, which outlined rules for neighborhood mutual assistance, and specifically stated that residents are encouraged to help one another with property maintenance, and may accept reasonable compensation for time and materials, without such assistance being classified as a commercial enterprise. The exact threshold was income exceeding $5,000 per calendar year from any single assistance activity. I had made maybe $300 total helping neighbors. I was not even close to the threshold. I drafted a response letter that night, citing Section 8.12 and documenting every instance I had used the snow machine, including statements from neighbors confirming the informal, occasional nature of my help. I kept the tone professional and respectful, even though I wanted to tell Patricia exactly where she could stick her violation notice. I hand-delivered the response the next morning to the HOA office, a small building near the development entrance that looked more like a garden shed than an actual office. Patricia was there, sitting behind a cheap desk, her blonde hair pulled back so tight it probably hurt. She was maybe 50, with sharp features and the kind of expression that suggested she had been born disapproving of something. "Mr. Sullivan," she said when I walked in, not bothering with pleasantries, "I assume you are here about your violation." "I am here about your mistake," I replied, handing her my response letter. "I am not in violation of anything. Section 8.12 clearly allows what I have been doing." She barely glanced at the letter before setting it aside. "Section 8.12 has nothing to do with operating commercial equipment. Your snow machine violates size restrictions. The size restrictions in Section 14.7 use the phrase appropriate for single-family home use. My machine is appropriate. I use it for my single-family home. The fact that it happens to be commercial grade does not make it inappropriate." Patricia leaned back in her chair, her eyes cold. "Mr. Sullivan, I have been the president of this HOA for 8 years. I know these bylaws inside and out. Your interpretation is incorrect and your violation stands. You have 6 days remaining." "Then I will see you at the next board meeting," I said. "I am formally requesting a hearing to contest this violation, which according to Section 4.9, you are required to grant me." Her jaw tightened. She had not expected me to know the bylaws as well as I did. "The next board meeting is in 3 weeks. That is fine, and according to Section 4.11, no fines can be assessed while a violation is under formal review." I walked out before she could respond, feeling a small surge of victory, but I knew this was just the opening move. Patricia was not going to back down easily, and 3 weeks was a long time for her to scheme. I spent the next few days talking to neighbors, and what I learned made me even angrier. Patricia had been systematically targeting people for the most ridiculous violations imaginable. The Johnsons, who Derek had mentioned, had actually been fined $250 for their late wreath. The Martins were fighting a $500 fine over the car situation. A family on Birch Street had been cited because their house numbers were the wrong font, not matching the approved style that was apparently somewhere in the bylaws, but that nobody could actually find. The more people I talked to, the more I realized Patricia was not just power-hungry. She was making money off these fines. The HOA budget was public record, and when I requested a copy, I discovered something interesting. Patricia had successfully pushed through a bylaw amendment 2 years ago that gave the HOA president a performance bonus based on enforcement effectiveness. Translation: the more fines she collected, the bigger her bonus. She had brought in over $30,000 in fines last year alone. Her bonus had been $6,000. This was not about my snow machine. This was about money, and I was just her latest target. I called an informal meeting at my house that Saturday. 18 neighbors showed up, all of them people who either had been fined or were currently fighting violations. We sat in my living room, drinking coffee and sharing stories that ranged from absurd to infuriating. "She fined us because our mailbox was dented," said Rachel Chen, who lived on Spruce Drive. "A snowplow hit it during the winter. We were planning to replace it, but she wanted it done immediately. When we explained we had ordered a new one but it was on back order, she started fining us anyway. She tried to fine me for having a wreath with the wrong color ribbon," added Tom Henderson. "Apparently only certain colors are approved for seasonal decorations." We spent 2 hours comparing notes, and by the end, I had a plan forming. If Patricia wanted to play hardball, I was going to hit back in a way she would never see coming. Monday morning, I created a Facebook group called Cascade Mountain Estates Snow Machine Rental. I posted a simple message: "Winter is not over yet. Need your driveway cleared. I am renting out my commercial-grade snow machine for $30 an hour, operator included. DM me to schedule." Within 2 hours, I had 15 messages. Within a day, I had 30. People were not just interested in snow removal. They wanted to support me, to stick it to Patricia, to show that her petty tyranny was not going to work anymore. I started scheduling appointments. Tuesday afternoon, I cleared the Hendersons' driveway and sidewalk. Wednesday morning, I did 3 houses on Birch Street back-to-back. Thursday, I had 5 appointments. By Friday, I was booked solid for the next 2 weeks, and we had not even gotten another major snowfall yet. The best part: I was not running a home business. I was renting equipment. The bylaws said nothing about equipment rental. I checked, double-checked, and triple-checked. Section 22.3 prohibited commercial enterprises, but equipment rental fell under personal property rights, which were covered under Alaska state law and superseded HOA regulations. Patricia caught on quickly. She showed up at the Henderson place while I was clearing their driveway, her face red from either cold or anger, probably both. "What do you think you are doing?" she shouted over the roar of the snow machine. "I killed the engine. I am renting my personal property, completely legal. This is a direct violation of your notice. You were supposed to remove this machine. The machine is still at my property. I am bringing it to other locations temporarily. Nothing in Section 14.7 prohibits that. You are running a business. I am renting equipment. There is a difference. Feel free to check with a lawyer." I restarted the machine and went back to work, leaving her fuming in the street. That night, I got another letter. This one was even more aggressive, threatening immediate legal action and claiming I was deliberately undermining HOA authority. The fine had increased to $1,000 per day. I responded with my own letter, copying every member of the HOA board, outlining Patricia's conflict of interest with the fine-based bonus system, and requesting an immediate ethics review. I also CC'd a lawyer friend of mine, just to make it clear I was not messing around. The snow machine rental business, if you could call it that, exploded. Word spread beyond Cascade Mountain Estates. People in neighboring developments started calling. I was clearing 10 to 15 driveways a day, making serious money, and most importantly, proving a point. Every client I served, I asked them to document the service and sign a simple statement confirming they had rented equipment from me, not hired me for a service. It was a subtle legal distinction, but it mattered. I was building a paper trail that would destroy any case Patricia tried to make. The board meeting was scheduled for the third Tuesday of February. I showed up early with Derek and 8 other neighbors who wanted to speak on my behalf. The meeting room in the community center was packed. Over 60 residents crammed into a space meant for maybe 40. Patricia sat at the head table with 4 other board members. George Kramer, a retired banker who mostly seemed bored; Susan Park, a real estate agent who clearly just wanted to be anywhere else; David Chen, Rachel's husband who had only recently been elected; and Margaret Foster, an elderly woman who had been on the board since the development was built. "This meeting will come to order," Patricia announced, banging a gavel like she was a judge. "First order of business is the continued violation by Mr. Yates Sullivan of Cascade Drive regarding unauthorized commercial equipment and business operations." I stood up. "I am here to contest that violation and to present evidence that I am in full compliance with all HOA bylaws." "You have 5 minutes," Patricia said dismissively. I spent 10 minutes laying out my case. I explained Section 8.12, the distinction between equipment rental and business services, and the fact that I had not violated any actual bylaw. I presented my documentation, statements from clients and financial records showing that even with the rental income, I was not operating a commercial enterprise by any legal definition. Then I went for the throat. "I would also like to raise a concern about a potential conflict of interest. The HOA president receives a bonus based on fine collection, which creates a financial incentive to issue questionable violations. I have documented 37 violations issued in the past 18 months that were either dismissed upon appeal or never actually violated any bylaw. I am requesting a full audit of the HOA enforcement practices and a review of the bonus structure." The room erupted. Neighbors started shouting questions at Patricia, who looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. George Kramer, the retired banker, suddenly looked very interested. He leaned forward and said, "I was not aware the bonus structure was based on fine collection. When was this implemented?" "It was approved 2 years ago," Patricia said defensively. "It is a standard performance metric." "It is a terrible conflict of interest," David Chen said, looking at his fellow board members. "We should have never approved that." Susan Park nodded. "I do not remember voting on that, actually." Patricia's face went white. "It was in the budget approval. You all signed off on it." "Buried in the budget is not the same as a transparent vote," George said. He turned to me. "Mr. Sullivan, do you have copies of that documentation you mentioned?" I handed over a thick folder I had prepared. George spent several minutes flipping through it, his expression growing darker. Finally, he set it down and looked at Patricia. "This is problematic. We need to table Mr. Sullivan's violation and conduct an internal review. I move to suspend all pending fines against any resident until we can verify the validity of each violation." "I second that," David said immediately. Patricia tried to argue, but she was outvoted 4-1. The motion passed. My fines were suspended. More importantly, every other resident's fines were suspended too. The room broke into applause, but I was not done. "I have one more thing. I have been contacted by over 40 residents in this development who have concerns about HOA management. We would like to propose a special election for HOA president, as allowed under Section 3.5 of the bylaws, in cases where a significant portion of the community has lost confidence in leadership." Patricia shot to her feet. "You cannot do that." "Actually, he can," Margaret Foster said, speaking for the first time that night. The elderly woman looked at Patricia with disappointment. Section 3.5 allows for a special election if requested by at least 20% of residents. "How many signatures do you have, Mr. Sullivan?" 68, as of this morning. "That is 19.4%. I will have the required 20% by tomorrow." Margaret nodded. "Then we will schedule a special election. Per the bylaws, it must be held within 30 days of a valid request." Patricia left the meeting without another word, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. But I did not care. I had won at least this round. Over the next month, things moved fast. The snow machine rental business continued to boom. We got 2 major snowstorms that buried Eagle River under 4 feet of fresh powder, and I worked 16-hour days clearing driveways all over the area. I hired Derek to help operate a second machine I rented from a local equipment company, and we became the unofficial snow removal team for half the town. The money was fantastic, but more than that, it felt good to help people and to prove that Patricia could not bully me into submission. The special election was scheduled for March 15th. 3 people filed to run for HOA president: Patricia, who refused to go down without a fight; George Kramer, who decided the board needed better financial oversight; and me, mostly because people kept asking me to run. I did not particularly want to be HOA president. I just wanted Patricia gone. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I could actually do some good. I could reform the bylaws, eliminate the ridiculous fines, and turn the HOA into something that actually served the community instead of terrorizing it. I ran a simple campaign. No signs, no mailers, just conversations with neighbors about what they wanted. Turns out, people wanted common sense. They wanted rules that made sense, enforcement that was fair, and a board that was not out to squeeze every dollar from residents through bogus fines. Patricia ran a fear campaign. She sent out letters warning that my election would lead to chaos, declining property values, and the destruction of the community's standards. She claimed I was a radical who wanted to eliminate all rules and turn Cascade Mountain Estates into a free-for-all. George ran on his banking experience and promised financial responsibility, which was respectable but a little boring. The election was held on a sunny Saturday in mid-March. We voted in the community center, paper ballots, very official. 312 residents voted out of the 350 eligible. That was a massive turnout for an HOA election. The results were counted that evening. I won with 68% of the vote. George came in second with 24%. Patricia got 8%, and I suspected most of those votes were from people she had not yet terrorized. Her reign of terror was over. I took office immediately, and my first act was to propose a complete overhaul of the HOA bylaws. I formed a committee of 15 residents, including George, David Chen, and several others who had been victims of Patricia's enforcement crusade. We spent 6 weeks going through every section, clarifying vague language, eliminating absurd rules, and creating a fair enforcement system. We got rid of the fine-based bonus system entirely. We reduced most fines to reasonable levels and implemented a warning system for first offenses. We clarified the equipment rules to allow commercial-grade tools for personal use. We eliminated the ridiculous restrictions on holiday decorations, mailbox styles, and parking. Most importantly, we created a transparent appeals process that did not require hiring a lawyer to navigate. The new bylaws were voted on in May and passed with 92% approval. Cascade Mountain Estates was officially no longer a totalitarian nightmare, Patricia disappeared after the election. Rumor had it she moved to Wasilla, probably to terrorize some other community. I did not care as long as she was gone. The snow machine rental business wound down as winter ended, but I had made enough money to upgrade my equipment and set myself up for the next winter. I was already getting calls from property management companies asking if I would be interested in contract work. What started as a way to fight back against HOA tyranny had turned into a legitimate side business, but the real victory was not the money or even getting rid of Patricia. It was watching the community transform. Without the constant threat of fines and violations, people relaxed. Neighbors started talking to each other again. Block parties happened. Kids played in the streets without parents worrying about someone reporting them for chalk drawings on the sidewalk. One evening in early June, I was sitting on my front porch with Derek, drinking beer and watching the sunset, which in Alaska that time of year meant it was almost midnight and still light out. "You know," Derek said, "when you got that first letter from Patricia, I thought you were going to just sell the snow machine and move on." "I almost did," I admitted. But something about her tone just made me angry. She was not trying to enforce reasonable rules. She was trying to bully me. "And instead, you ended up taking over the HOA," I laughed. "Yeah, I did not see that coming. You know what the weirdest part is? I actually like being HOA president, not the paperwork or the boring meetings, but the ability to actually help people and make reasonable decisions." "Are you going to run again next year?" "Maybe. Or maybe I will find someone else to take over. George would be good. He has better organizational skills than me." I took a sip of beer. "But for now, I am just going to enjoy the fact that I can park my snow machine in my driveway without some power-hungry bureaucrat threatening to fine me into bankruptcy." Derek raised his bottle. "To snow machines and petty victories." "To snow machines," I agreed, clinking my bottle against his. Summer in Eagle River was beautiful. The snow melted, the rivers swelled with runoff, and the mountains turned green. I spent my weekends hiking and fishing, enjoying the freedom of not being under constant threat of HOA violations, but I stayed active in the community. I attended every board meeting, worked with the other board members to address legitimate concerns, and made sure we were being good stewards of the development. We repaired roads, updated the playground equipment, and organized community events that people actually wanted to attend. In July, we had our first annual Cascade Mountain Estates block party. We closed off the main street through the development, set up grills and picnic tables, and invited everyone to bring food and hang out. Over 200 people showed up. There was live music, games for kids, and a general sense of community that had been missing for years. I was manning the grill, flipping burgers when Rachel Chen came up to me with her husband David. "I just wanted to thank you," Rachel said, "for everything you did." We were seriously considering moving because of Patricia. Now we are happy to stay. "You do not have to thank me," I said. "I was just standing up for myself. The fact that it helped everyone else was a bonus." "No," David said firmly. "You did more than stand up for yourself. You organized people, you fought back smart instead of just getting angry, and you actually made things better. That takes real leadership." I did not know what to say to that, so I just handed them burgers and changed the subject. But their words stuck with me. Maybe I had stumbled into this whole situation, but I had handled it the right way. I had not just complained or given up. I had found a solution that worked, and in doing so, I had made life better for hundreds of people. As summer turned to fall, I started preparing for winter. I ordered new parts for my snow machine, did maintenance on the engine, and reached out to previous clients to let them know I would be available again. The response was overwhelming. People were already booking appointments for snow removal, even though the first snow was months away. I also got a call from a regional property management company in Anchorage. They wanted to contract me to handle snow removal for 3 small commercial properties. It was not a huge job, but it was steady work and good money. More than that, it was validation that my little revenge scheme against Patricia had turned into a real, sustainable business. In October, I officially registered Sullivan Snow Services as a limited liability company. I hired an accountant to keep the books clean and a lawyer to make sure I had all the proper licensing and insurance. If I was going to do this for real, I was going to do it right. The first snow of the season came in late October, a light dusting that barely counted. But November brought the real stuff. 2 feet overnight with another foot predicted by morning. My phone started ringing at 5 in the morning. By 6, I was out on the first job, my snow machine roaring to life in the pre-dawn darkness. Derek joined me an hour later with the rental machine, and we worked together all day, clearing driveways and parking lots across Eagle River and into Anchorage. We finished the last job after dark, exhausted but satisfied. "I forgot how much I hate winter," Derek said as we loaded the machines onto the trailer. "Then why do you keep helping me?" "Because the money is good, and because it is fun to say we built this business out of spite." I laughed. "Pretty sure that is not the business model they teach in school." "No, but it should be. Spite is a powerful motivator." December was insane. Eagle River got slammed with storm after storm, and we were working 7 days a week. I hired 2 more helpers, both neighbors from Cascade Mountain Estates who needed extra cash. We became a well-oiled machine, pun intended, clearing dozens of properties every day. The HOA work continued too. We held monthly meetings, addressed resident concerns, and continued refining the bylaws based on feedback. The difference between this and Patricia's regime was night and day. People actually liked their HOA now, or at least did not actively hate it. In January, something happened that I had not expected. A lawyer showed up at my door with a subpoena. Patricia was suing me personally and the HOA for defamation, claiming that my accusations about the fine-based bonus system had damaged her reputation and caused her emotional distress. I called my lawyer friend, Marcus Reynolds, who specialized in HOA law. He looked over the lawsuit and laughed. "This is garbage," he said. "Everything you said about her was documented fact. Truth is an absolute defense to defamation. Plus, she is going to have a really hard time claiming damages when she was voted out by the community in a landslide. So, I should not worry." "Oh, you should absolutely take it seriously. She is clearly angry and wants to make your life difficult, but you are going to win this, no question." We filed a response denying all allegations and requesting the case be dismissed as frivolous. We also filed a counterclaim for legal fees, since Patricia was clearly using the lawsuit as harassment. The case dragged on for months. Patricia's lawyer kept filing motions, trying to drag out the process and rack up my legal costs. But Marcus was good, and he swatted down every attempt. In April, the judge finally granted our motion to dismiss, calling Patricia's lawsuit entirely without merit, and ordering her to pay my legal fees, which totaled about $12,000. She never paid. We ended up getting a judgment against her, but by that point, she had apparently filed for bankruptcy. I never saw a dime, but honestly, I did not care. The point was that she lost again, and everyone knew it. Spring came, the snow melted, and Sullivan Snow Services shifted gears. I had bought a commercial lawn mower and started offering landscaping services during the off-season. The business kept growing, and by May, I was making enough money that I considered quitting my day job as an IT consultant. Derek talked me out of it. "Do not get cocky," he said. "You have had one good year. Make sure this is sustainable before you burn bridges." He was right, of course. I kept the IT work but reduced my hours, giving me more time to focus on the business and the HOA. The HOA continued to thrive. Property values in Cascade Mountain Estates actually increased, not because of strict enforcement of petty rules, but because people wanted to live in a community that was well managed and reasonable. We had a waiting list of people trying to buy homes in the development. In June, we held our second annual block party. This one was even bigger than the first, with over 300 people attending. We had bouncy castles for kids, a beer garden for adults, and a raffle with prizes donated by local businesses. The sense of community was incredible. I was standing near the beer garden, talking to George Kramer about the HOA budget, when a woman I did not recognize approached me. She was maybe 30, wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, with dark hair pulled into a ponytail. "Are you Yates Sullivan?" she asked. "That is me." "I am Linda Vasquez. I am a reporter for the Anchorage Daily News. I am doing a story about HOA reform in Alaska and your name keeps coming up. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" I glanced at George, who shrugged. "Sure," I said. "What do you want to know?" We sat at a picnic table, and Linda pulled out a notebook. "I have been covering HOA disputes for a few years now, and your situation with Patricia Vanderbilt is fascinating. You essentially started a business out of spite, used it to rally community support, and ended up overthrowing an HOA president who had been abusing her power for years. That is not something you hear about often." "I would not say I started the business out of spite," I said. "But the spite definitely helped." Linda laughed. "Fair enough. But seriously, what you did here has had ripple effects. I have been getting calls from people in other HOAs across Alaska who are dealing with similar issues. Your story has inspired people to stand up for themselves." "That is good, I guess. No one should have to live under a tyrannical HOA. We talked for about 30 minutes. Linda asked about the snow machine, the rental business, the election, and the reforms we had made. She was thorough and thoughtful, and I got the sense that she genuinely cared about the issue. The article came out 2 weeks later. It was a front-page story in the local section, with the headline, "How One Man's Snow Machine Sparked HOA Reform in Eagle River." It detailed everything that had happened, interviewed several neighbors, and included quotes from George and David Chen about the changes we had made. The article also mentioned Patricia by name and outlined the problematic bonus system she had implemented. It was fair but unflinching, and I knew it had to hurt. 2 days after the article came out, I got a call from a number I did not recognize. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hello. Mr. Sullivan, this is Detective Karen Morrison with the Anchorage Police Department. I am calling about Patricia Vanderbilt." My stomach dropped. "What about her?" "We have opened an investigation into possible embezzlement from the Cascade Mountain Estates HOA. Your name came up in connection with the initial complaint. Do you have time to come down to the station and answer some questions?" I agreed to meet her that afternoon. Marcus came with me, insisting that even though I had not done anything wrong, it was smart to have a lawyer present. Detective Morrison was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She sat us down in an interview room and laid out a file on the table. "Mr. Sullivan, I want to be clear that you are not a suspect in this investigation. We are looking into Miss Vanderbilt's handling of HOA funds. The article in the Anchorage Daily News prompted several former board members to come forward with concerns. Can you tell me what you know about the fine-based bonus system?" I walked her through everything. The bylaw amendment, the documentation I had found showing the bonus amounts, the pattern of questionable violations. I provided copies of all my records, including the financial audit we had conducted after I became president. Did you find any irregularities in the audit? Detective Morrison asked. We found that Patricia had collected over $30,000 in fines the year before I took over. Her bonus was $6,000. But we also found some discrepancies in how the fine money was recorded versus how much actually made it into the HOA accounts. What kind of discrepancies? About $8,000 over 2 years. We could not figure out where it went. We assumed it was bad bookkeeping, but now I am wondering if it was something else. Detective Morrison wrote notes. We are going to need copies of all your financial records, audit reports, and any correspondence you had with Miss Vanderbilt. I can get you everything, I said. The investigation took months. Detective Morrison was thorough, interviewing dozens of people, subpoenaing bank records, and reconstructing 2 years of HOA finances. In September, the findings came out. Patricia had been embezzling money from the HOA. The fine-based bonus system was legitimate, but she had also been pocketing cash payments from residents who paid their fines in person, never recording the payments and keeping the money for herself. The total amount was just over $18,000. Not a fortune, but enough to be a felony. Patricia was arrested in October. The mugshot made the local news, and I would be lying if I said I did not feel a surge of satisfaction seeing her face on TV, looking angry and defeated. She was charged with felony theft and fraud. The case went to trial in December, and I was called to testify. I spent an hour on the stand, walking through my documentation and explaining how the fine system worked. Patricia's lawyer tried to make me look like I had a vendetta, but Marcus had prepared me well. I stuck to the facts, kept my emotions in check, and let the evidence speak for itself. The jury found her guilty on all counts. She was sentenced to 18 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and ordered to pay full restitution to the HOA. She also had to pay a $10,000 fine. Watching her get sentenced was surreal. This woman who had terrorized an entire community, who had abused her power and stolen from her neighbors, was finally being held accountable. It was justice, pure and simple. After the trial, several reporters wanted to interview me. I did a few, mostly local outlets, but I tried to downplay my role. The real heroes were the people who came forward with information, the board members who supported the investigation, and Detective Morrison, who did the hard work of building the case. But privately, I felt vindicated. Everything I had done, from renting out the snow machine to running for HOA president to pushing for reforms, had been the right call. I had not just fought back against a bully. I had helped expose a criminal. Winter came again, and Sullivan's Snow Services was busier than ever. I had 4 employees now, 3 machines and contracts with a dozen commercial properties. We were clearing over 100 driveways a week, and the money was rolling in. I finally quit the IT consulting job. The business was stable, sustainable, and honestly more fulfilling than anything I had done before. There was something deeply satisfying about building something from scratch, especially something that had started as an act of defiance. The HOA was running smoothly too. George had taken over as president, and I had stepped back to just being a regular board member. We continued making improvements, organizing community events, and proving that an HOA could actually serve its residents instead of oppressing them. In February, almost exactly 2 years after I got that first threatening letter from Patricia, I was featured in a national magazine article about HOA reform. The article used my story as a case study for how residents could fight back against abusive HOAs and create positive change. I got emails from people all over the country, thanking me for speaking out and asking for advice on their own situations. I tried to help where I could, mostly by pointing them to resources and encouraging them to organize their neighbors. One email stood out. It was from a guy in Colorado who was dealing with an HOA that sounded almost identical to Patricia's regime. He said my story had inspired him to fight back instead of just accepting the abuse. 6 months later, he emailed again to say he had successfully reformed his HOA and gotten the corrupt board members removed. That felt good. Maybe my weird little battle over a snow machine had actually made a difference beyond just my own community. Spring came again, and I was sitting on my porch one evening with Derek, drinking beer and watching the sunset. It was a tradition now, a way to mark the changing seasons and reflect on how far we had come. "You ever think about how weird this all is?" Derek asked. 2 years ago, you were just a guy with a snow machine. Now you are a business owner, a minor celebrity, and the guy who took down a criminal HOA president. When you put it that way, it does sound kind of ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but it is also awesome. I took a sip of beer and looked out at the mountains, still capped with snow even though it was May. You know what I have learned through all this? Most people do not fight back because they think they cannot win. They see someone with power like Patricia, and they assume that power is absolute. But it is not. Power only works if people accept it. "So what, you are a philosopher now," I laughed. "No, I am just a guy who refused to get pushed around, and it turned out that was enough." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Finally, Derek said, "So what is next? You have conquered the HOA world. Are you going to run for mayor or something?" "God, no. I have had enough of politics to last a lifetime. I just want to keep running my business, help out with the HOA when needed, and live my life without anyone threatening to fine me for existing." That does sound pretty good. It is, I agreed. It really is. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A car drove past, its headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. Life in Cascade Mountain Estates went on, peaceful and normal, the way it should have been all along. I thought about Patricia, sitting in prison, her reign of terror ended by her own greed and arrogance. I thought about all the people she had hurt, the families she had stressed, the community she had divided. And I thought about how all of it had been stopped because I refused to back down over a snow machine. Sometimes the smallest acts of defiance lead to the biggest changes. Sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for everyone. And sometimes, just sometimes, the good guys actually win. I finished my beer and stood up, stretching. I am going to head in. Early job tomorrow, commercial or residential, both. We are doing the lot at that new medical complex in the morning, then I've got 6 residential jobs in the afternoon. Living the dream, Derek said with a grin. You know what, I really am. I went inside, checked my schedule for the next day, and went to bed. Outside, the Alaska night settled over Eagle River, quiet and cold and beautiful. And in my driveway, my snow machine sat waiting, ready for whatever came next. It was more than just a piece of equipment now. It was a symbol, a reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to turn their weapon against them. Patricia had tried to take away my snow machine. Instead, I had used it to build a business, reform a community, and expose a criminal. Not bad for a guy who just wanted to clear his driveway in peace. As I drifted off to sleep, I smiled. Tomorrow would bring more snow, more work, more challenges, but I was ready for it. I had learned that I was stronger than I thought, that community mattered, and that standing up for what was right was always worth the effort. The battle over the snow machine was over, but the lessons it taught me would last forever. And somewhere out there in communities across the country, other people were learning the same lessons, finding their own courage, and fighting back against their own petty tyrants. The world was changing, one snow machine at a time, and I was proud to have played my part in making that happen.